Let me read you just a line from a poem that you may or may not have heard. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. This is the first line from Jared Manley Hopkins' poem entitled God's Grandeur. So this morning is the last Sunday of the year. And we stand looking back, reflecting on what's happened up to this point. And we spend some time looking ahead, looking forward. What will the next year hold for us, for you and I? This is not a New Year's Eve message, by the way. Although I do a lot of dreaming and forecasting this time of year. As the calendar flips to the next year, I'm always kind of reorienting or kind of reevaluating, is this the way I want to live at this moment? But today is going to be more around reflection than resolutions or achievements or goals or plans of action. Though I still would like to lose a few pounds. I'll just be honest. I'll probably put that in somewhere, but I'm afraid that I'm like my brother who last year said I'd like to lose 15 pounds, and then he got a hold of me and says, I only have 20 to go. In my hope of reflection, I've landed on a familiar story to talk about today. And this is the story of Jacob from the Old Testament. And I want to share how Jacob discovered sacred places in common places. In fact, that's what I've entitled the message today. It's maybe my best title of a message in my life. Sacred spaces in common places. That's what we're going to see in the story of Jacob. Really, the story of Jacob, who was fleeing from his brother, stopped in the middle of the night, or at nighttime, in what seemed like just another spot on the road. He took a stone, put it under his head as a pillow. That's all he had. Put it under his head as a pillow and slept the night. This is the way the story goes. I'm going to project this, I think. But this is Genesis 28. Jacob left Beersheba and set out to Haran. When he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth with its top reaching into heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I promised you. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. He was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. Early the next morning, Jacob took the stone he had under his head, set it up as a pillar, and poured oil on top of it. He called that place Bethel. This is a fantastic story and an important story for us. Nothing about the place that he stopped was special. I mean, honestly, there was no temple, there was no altar built, there was no place to drop off an offering. It was just a spot along the side of the road, a place his head could rest because the sun had set. That's what it says. Yet, it was here in this utterly ordinary moment that Jacob encountered God. When we consider Jacob, it says he didn't do anything to get God to pay him a visit, except for being a scoundrel, I guess. If you know the story of Jacob, I mean, at this point in his life, he was on the run from his brother because he had deceived his brother, and his brother was after his neck. His brother was trying to kill him, And he had deceived scores of other people up to this point. As a matter of fact, his name means the deceiver. So that was his preparation for this encounter with God. Very important. As a matter of fact, he did the opposite of what would be the normal prescription to meet with God, didn't he? I mean, honestly. So there are just a couple things that I thought of when I initially read this. Number one, we need to know that God is the genesis of encounter. It's not you. It's not us. It's God is the genesis of encounter. And secondly, now this is my sermon, so pay attention to this next line. Our role is simply to pay attention, to have our eyes open. In his dream, he saw the angels ascending and descending on a stairway to heaven. I have this as a parenthetical thought, which Robert Plant and Jimmy Page astutely lifted from the story. Hello. I put that on this morning, and I thought, I wonder if anybody will even understand that. Apparently some do. And he heard God's promise of presence and protection. When he awoke, Jacob made a profound declaration that I believe speaks to us directly today as we enter into the new year. Listen, this is what it says. Surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. Surely the Lord was in this place, and I was not aware of it. You have to know that Jacob was not alone in this kind of experience. If you look at Exodus chapter 3, we see Moses herding sheep on the backside of a desert, the sheep of Jethro, and he discovers this bush that's burning near him, and he looks up, and God speaks to him and says, hey, take your shoes off, for this is holy ground. And he had an encounter with God there. The text makes it clear there was nothing inherently special or certainly not holy about where he decided to travel with Jethro's sheep. Really, it was just more dirt. I mean, that's where he stopped. More dirt, sparse grass, and a scraggy brushland. Yet God identified it as what? As holy ground. Now listen, I don't know where your mind goes with all this, but I think there's a lesson right there for us. That God's holy ground isn't just inside four walls. God identified it as holy, and when Moses' eyes were opened, it became an altar. It became the sacred space. There's another story in 1 Samuel 3. The young Samuel is serving in the temple. You'd think anyone would recognize God's voice if their job was hanging out in the temple. Yet when God audibly called someone in the temple, when he audibly called Samuel, he kept running back to Eli and said, what do you want? He heard the audible voice, went back to Eli, and Eli goes, I didn't call you, go back to sleep. On the third time, Eli looks up and finally smartens up and realizes something's going down, and he goes, look, wait. Go back and go to sleep. The next time you hear this, say to God, speak, Lord, for your servant listens. Sometimes we can be in the holiest of places and still miss God's voice. We can still resist the encounter. Now, I have to confess something that troubles me. Sometimes I wonder if I even want any of these altars to be around. After years of studying theology and reading literally thousands of books about God and ministry, I've become quite comfortable with analyzing ideas about God rather than encountering Him. Yet when God chooses to disrupt me, I'm actually quite glad, don't get me wrong, but I have created a neat box that all of the facts fit into. Over the 40 years I've been doing this stuff, I've discovered that I've grown in my limitation as holding on to the beginner's mind. You know that language? In other words, it's kind of like, and when I was younger, I'd hate it when people my age would say this kind of stuff, but I would say something and they'd say, I've been there, I've done that, I got the t-shirt. And I would say, don't ever say that to me again. unfortunately, I feel like I kind of say that with my actions. Yeah, I've done that. I've actually done that. That's not the beginner's mind. As a matter of fact, that is the attitude that keeps you from learning and being curious. I wonder if I would recognize a rock-shaped altar if I stubbed my toe on it. And honestly, I might feel more inconvenienced than inspired. I'm not sure you can relate at all, but if you've attended church for even a little while, I presume that you do, because you've heard this stuff over and over as well. It's easier sometimes to keep God in the Sunday morning slot than risking finding him in unexpected places that might demand unexpected responses. As I've pondered this Christmas and New Year's, this season, both Robbie and I have worked really hard to intentionally pay attention, to watch what's going on around us differently, to activate our ability to reflect and turn the volume up on that. The weirdest thing has happened, honestly. We have found ourselves in sacred spaces. Spaces that we occupy all the time. Yet living in them, unaware of the sacrament. The Holy Communion of deep emotion and affection we experienced one night with her sister at our house. It was just this moment. All of a sudden, both Robbie and I, we both realized it at the same time. This is an altar. I didn't have a rock around to tip on its end and pour oil over it, but it was a holy moment. Or with my kids, another night that we were with them, where we were in this normal conversation, banter, kind of repartee, and all of this stuff, and all of a sudden something happened and somebody opened up, and all of a sudden we were in some place that was sacred. And quite frankly, we have those all the time. I just wasn't aware. I wasn't paying attention. Another night, we have some close friends in our living room going through real challenges, and I sat there and went, this is holy ground right now. It's holy ground. Like Moses at the burning bush, like Samuel in his quiet temple, like Jacob with his stone pillow, could it be that we are surrounded by potential encounters with God all the time? Barbara Taylor Brown wrote this. I'm reading this book right now. It's so good. She writes, "Earth is so thick with divine possibility that it is a wonder we can walk anywhere without cracking our shins on altars." The question isn't whether God is present, it's whether we're open to notice him, to remove our sandals, to answer, to let the ordinary stone become an altar. I'm persuaded of this. This is something that people like Judy can help us with. I'm just astounded by Judy. I mean, she kind of freaks me out most of the time. Because every time she's doing stuff, there's a God encounter that happens. Is that because it's not happening around us? Honestly, let's just think about this for a moment. Does God only like Judy? No, man, I'm telling you, I'm positive that Judy is not the exclusive person in the room. But she has her heart and her mind and her eyes sensitized to see the holy around her. I wish I could just stop right now and just pull something over our church and give us some vitamins or something to be able to have that awareness, that reflection. I'm persuaded that if in the next week, I'm not going to be here next week, so it could happen, I just won't be here, that if that happened in the next week, when we take this mic and pass it around, we will need 3 hours because we will see the holy in this next week. And it'll be in the ordinary. It'll be in the common stuff. I do think Judy is a model for us in this. It seems like everywhere and every day she recognizes, going back to Barbara Brown Taylor's line, the thickness of divine possibility all around her. So here's my invitation to myself, but also for all of us in this new year. By the way, I need to say this. I met with my therapist last week. And anybody pay attention to their Enneagram number? Raise your hand if you do. I'm a 3. I'm a 3-4. So 3s they're wired for achievement. They want to do stuff. They want to get stuff done. And then 4 is the individualist, means if someone came in this morning with this same shirt on, I'd have to go home and change. That's not an exaggeration. I get really uncomfortable if I'm wearing the same clothes as somebody else. But the 3 is the achiever. So as I've been thinking about, by the way, I'm so grateful for you, church, and our board for allowing me to take this break. So as I was given the opportunity to take the break, my 3 kicks in, and I start making a plan. And my plan is to get God to talk to me. So I start putting things on my schedule so he'll do it. And so I'm talking to my counselor. He's a great guy. And I'm saying, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and 3 months are gone. And he goes, counselors aren't supposed to tell you what to do. They're supposed to be non-directive and, coax it out of you. But he just goes, maybe you should try this. Instead of planning this thing so that you try to get God to act, maybe you should do whatever you're going to do, yet pay attention. Just pay attention. Because God's going to be wherever you're going. He's going to talk to you. It doesn't matter if you go to Arizona or Deer Park or the south of France or Iraq. Both those things are on the map, on the radar for me. As he said it, I thought to myself, that's a great observation. Then I thought, dude, you are so slow on the uptick. Because this is your life. This is what I do every time there's an open spot in my life. I go into hyper dreamy visionizing. I got to get something done. If I don't, I'll feel like I didn't accomplish what I was supposed to. So how can we pay attention to the sacred? What if, instead of rushing to the next thing, what if instead of protecting ourselves from holy interruptions, we learn to pay attention and welcome the sacred into the ordinary? What if we actually began noticing the sacred spaces in the commonplaces? What if we approached each day with Jacob's eventual awareness that God might be present even when, especially when, we least expect it? Maybe it's at your kitchen table, and that becomes an altar for your family. Maybe it's in your daily commute to work. That becomes a sanctuary of prayer. What if it could be coming forward for Holy Communion, and you're tired and despairing, and you hear the words of the sacrament? This is Christ's body broken for you. This is Christ's blood poured out for you. Maybe it's your workplace. It becomes holy ground of service. Perhaps it's stopping to greet a stranger warmly or choosing to see holy in someone who can't see it in themselves. Even the stone that you stub your toe on might become a pillar of God's presence in your life. Back to Barbara Brown Taylor, the last place most people look is right under their feet. In the everyday activities, accidents, and encounters of their lives. What possible spiritual significance could a trip to the grocery store have? How could something as common as a toothache be a door to greater life? Look, I'm talking like this is going to be some easy little slide for me, but those of you who know me know that I have some serious attention issues. I don't remember what I'm saying in the middle of when I'm saying it most of the time. But this is what I'm sure of. As Robbie and I, and hopefully our church, with Judy's help, uh, intentionally move toward this, and we develop the muscularity to actually see, the ability to help each other and encourage one another. In the words of the Hebrew author, all the more as you see the day approaching. I intend to join Brown in her assertion, again, my life depends on engaging the most ordinary physical activities with the most exquisite attention I can give it. My life depends on ignoring all touted distinctions between the secular and the sacred, the physical and the spiritual, the body and the soul. What is saving my life now is becoming more fully human, trusting that there's no way to God apart from real life in the real world. That's where the altars are. I am anticipating experiencing more Bethel in my day-to-day life. Robbie and I have encouraged each other in this practice of reflection. I hope that we, the church, us, together can encourage one another, mostly by example. I mean, this is a little bit of a message, but I want to tell you, sorry, Judy, I don't want to, make you feel weird, but I watch you. I notice how you do this, and I want to learn more of that. I want to watch and learn. And I really do think it's life-changing. It's a paradigm shift. Before I close today, let me read to you from a small section from a Mary Oliver poem. By the way, I'm just going to give my wife a little shout out right now. I've been reading poetry for the last year and a half. We've been reading large portions of it, and Mary Oliver is the GOAT. I'm just going to say it. The greatest of all time. And this particular poem, Ravi memorized this last year, and this is the last part of it. Are my boots old? Is my coat torn? Am I no longer young and still not half perfect? Let me keep my mind on what matters, which is my work, which is mostly standing still and learning to be astonished. Those are words from the Lord for us. Remember, Jacob didn't create sacred space. He just didn't. He simply recognized it. Can I say this again? Jacob did not create the sacred space. He actually had his eyes open, standing still, becoming aware of the holy, and being astonished. That was his journey. And I think that's our journey as well. As we step into the new year, may we have our eyes to see and hearts to recognize the sacred spaces in our ordinary places. May we be surprised, like Jacob, to find that the Lord is in this place even when we're not aware of it. And may we, like Moses, have the courage to turn aside, look, even when we're afraid of what we might encounter. Now, I'm going to just give a little caveat to this message. Everything I've said does not exclude this gathering. The Bible says this is wherever two or three come together in my name, I'm in the midst of them. This is a place where holy things can happen, but it's not the only place it can happen. That's what I want you to take away. And I want you to take away, my hope is that we would join together to ask God to open our eyes around us in the ordinary. Please pray with me. Lord, saying this kind of stuff out loud makes me really nervous because I know I can be distracted with a million other things. But I'm going to treat myself with grace at this moment and realize even the motivations or the inclinations of my heart are grace. So please give your grace to our church, to us as individuals, but us as a community as well. This is not so we can brag or we can do anything. It's because we want to be fully human. We want to be fully people who are living into the fullest life that we can. And I am persuaded that's recognizing, accompanying, joining you in what you're doing in the world. So please, Lord, through your Spirit, give us awareness, give us strength, give us your grace. In Jesus' name, amen.